Let's now begin exploring the fascinating principles of using and managing time that can make the difference between success and failure. To begin at the beginning, let's talk a little bit about the relationship between time itself and achievement. We all know that it takes time to accomplish something. Depending on what you'd like to accomplish, it may take a little bit of time or a great deal of time. The same goal can also sometimes be achieved in less time or more time, depending on how good a job you want to do in achieving it. Think about any small task you might be confronted with around the house. Let's say one of your doors is stuck and needs planing in order for it to open and close easily. There are lots of ways you could accomplish that task and lots of shortcuts you could take. But in order to do a really good job, you know you should measure the door and doorway opening, figure out how much wood you need to remove, take the door off the hinges, and mount it on a sawhorse and plane it down until it reaches the right size. This approach may take longer than some others you can think of, but it's the best way to achieve your goal. And when the job is done properly, you know that door will never get stuck again. The person who takes the time to do the job right is the epitome of the self-disciplined achiever. Someone who has learned not to worry about time, but use it to its full potential to achieve a goal in the best way possible. None of your goals are going to be as simple as this one to accomplish, but the principle remains the same. To achieve with excellence, you're going to need a long period of time in which to allow your knowledge and skills to mature and grow. This is the concept of time that we call seasoning. Seasoning is a law of nature. All things take time to come to fruition. People, in their impatience to get what they want without going through this growing process, often end up stunting their own personal growth and making true success impossible. Shortcuts only lead to mediocrity and failure. Scientists, philosophers, artists, and statesmen have always recognized the importance of seasoning in accomplishing any goal. When asked by an impatient student how long it would take to become a master teacher, the Roman philosopher Epictetus replied, "Nothing comes into being all at once, not even the grape or the fig. If you say to me now, 'I want a fig,' I shall answer, 'That requires time.' Let the tree first bring forth tender blossoms. Let the blossoms endure the weathering of the sun, wind, and rain. Let the tree then put forth its fruit, and finally, let the fruit ripen." Cybervision founder Steve DeVore recalls learning about seasoning the hard way. "When I was 5 years old," he said, "I planted a garden in my backyard. Because I didn't understand how seeds grew, I would go out and dig them up every day to see if they'd sprouted yet. I hardly watered them, and I didn't weed them regularly as I should have. Because I was so impatient and neglectful, my plants never got the chance to grow properly. And when harvest time came, my vegetables were pitifully small and undeveloped. I had a friend next door, a slightly older boy who understood the principles of gardening. He let his plants grow and ripen in their own time, helping them along with regular watering, fertilizing, and weeding. He enjoyed a bountiful harvest that summer, and I learned a lesson about patience and self-discipline." All great achievers not only understand the concept of seasoning, but they value it greatly. They know that success cannot be hurried. They know that to try to hurry it is to ruin it. They understand that every step along the road to achievement is a necessary one and a small achievement in itself. And they also know that getting there can and should be half the fun. Self-disciplined achievers are willing to pay the price of time to realize their ambitions. They are not intimidated by the thought of having to work and study for 5, 10, even 15 years. Their commitment to a goal is absolute, and their vision of success is unwavering. The self-disciplined achiever knows that if what he wants will take 5 years to achieve, the 5-year effort will be worth it. He knows that those 5 years are going to pass anyway, and he has a choice about whether to spend them preparing for success or wasting the time thinking and dreaming about what he'd really like to do. For the self-disciplined achiever, there is no choice. He'll gladly spend those 5 years working and studying to achieve his goal. Does several years seem like a long time to you? Think how fast the last 5 years of your life have gone by. What did you do during that time to make achievement possible? If you had been working steadily towards your goal all that time, you could have achieved it by now. Let's say you're 34 years old, and your dream is to become an architect. You know it will take you 6 years of schooling and apprenticeship before you can get a good job with a respected architectural firm. But that means you'll be 40 years old by the time you reach your goal, and you feel you just can't wait that long. Stop and think. You're going to be 40 years old in 6 years whether you study architecture or not. And if you choose not to study it now, in 6 years, you'll be in the exact same position, wanting to be an architect and knowing it will take you 6 years to get there. Only by then, you'll have to work until you're 46 to achieve your goal. You can get there in 6 years by starting now, or you can choose to give up hope of ever getting there at all. If you really want to achieve your goal, 6 years won't seem like such a long time. As you'll find out later in this session, to the self-disciplined achiever, the 6 years will go by very fast. Impatient people want things to happen overnight. In the words of French philosopher Blaise Pascal, they anticipate the future as too slow in coming. And in being unwilling to devote hours of time to the kind of seasoning it takes to become accomplished at anything, they waste their lives by doing nothing at all, and they wonder why they always feel so unfulfilled. How many youngsters have you known who came home from a rock concert determined to learn to play the guitar? It looked easy when the group on stage was playing, so the youngster goes out and buys a guitar and takes his first few lessons. And all of a sudden, it becomes apparent that it's not easy. It's going to take years of hard work and effort to learn to play really well. So the youngster loses interest and gives up, bored with the tedium of practicing scales for hours. Yet the professional musicians he's watched have put in years of practice to get where they are, and where the youngster would like to be. The great artist Pablo Picasso was once approached by an admiring woman in a restaurant. Having recognized him, she asked him to draw something, anything, on a napkin for her. She told him she'd pay him whatever he thought was fair, if only he would provide her with this impromptu work of art. Picasso agreed and spent 5 minutes drawing a picture on the napkin. When he was finished, the woman picked the napkin up in delight. How much did he want for the picture, she asked. Calmly, Picasso replied, $10,000. Dumbfounded, the woman began to argue with him that a picture drawn on a napkin in 5 minutes couldn't possibly be worth that much. But Picasso just smiled and said, Madame, it may have only taken me 5 minutes to draw the picture, but it took me 40 years to learn how to draw it. 40 years. Does that seem like an interminable amount of time? To a master artist seeking the ultimate expression of his talent, a great scientist seeking a cure for disease, or an ambitious businessman trying to turn a small company into a Fortune 500 corporation, 40 years can seem to fly by overnight. To the dedicated, self-disciplined achiever, time is nourishment for what he wants to accomplish. And that time is well spent, taking step after step in a continuous effort to achieve a specific goal. The achiever does not get sidetracked. Every day he concentrates on the micro tasks that make up his macro purpose. And each completed micro task becomes a source of pleasure and a reward in itself. Top newscaster Eric Sevareid achieved his macro purpose by actually ignoring it. Instead, he concentrated on the micro purposes that would help him accomplish his goal. Sevareid tells the story in his own words. Once when I relinquished my job and income to undertake a book of 250,000 words, I could not bear to let my mind dwell on the whole scope of the project. I would have surely abandoned what has become my deepest source of professional pride. I tried to think only of the next paragraph, not the next page, and certainly not the next chapter. Thus, for 6 months, I never did anything but set down one paragraph after another. The book wrote itself. Years ago, I took on a daily writing and broadcasting chore that has totaled now more than 2,000 scripts. Had I been asked at the time to sign a contract to write 2,000 scripts, I would have refused in despair at the enormousness of such an undertaking. But I was only asked to write one, the next one, and that is all I have ever done. You can learn to work in microtasks by following your step-by-step plan for success and concentrating only on each step at a time. But you cannot learn seasoning as if it were a skill. Seasoning is an attitude that must be adopted and made part of your mental framework if you are able to achieve your lifelong purpose.